In this module, we'll be talking about contracts and the contract process at Brandeis. First, we'll be talking about contracts in general and why this policy is in place. So first off, what is a contract? We use that word a lot, but basically what a contract is it's a binding agreement between two or more parties. So most contracts at Brandeis are required to be reviewed by the Office of Procurement and Business Services. And once they approve them, they'll facilitate this agreement being signed by both parties, the external contractor and Brandeis. What's important to note is that only select individuals from procurement are the authorized to execute and sign contracts. The Department of Student Engagement does not do this, and especially students should never sign a contract. This should only be done by the Department of Procurement and Business Services. This process has a lot of moving parts, and so it can take up to 6 weeks and sometimes even longer. So planning ahead is really, really important with executing and having a contractor come to campus. Why do we need a contract? So it's pretty simple. Contracts are a record of a service that is going to be provided or ongoing services over a period of time. So it protects the university from needing to make a payment or do anything with this individual vendor, the risks that are associated with that. And it also protects the vendor to make sure that they get paid and are granted what they were guaranteed in the contract. When we talk about needing a contract, it's important to note who actually needs to use a contract. These generally are what we call independent consultants, vendors, performers, coaches, and freelancers. So basically anyone who is an individual or a company that you're paying to come to campus and to provide a service for the university or for an organization. We do not need a contract for Brandeis students, for Brandeis staff members, for restaurants or people providing catering, but almost anyone else needs a contract. Oh, I already talked about that, but basically, here we go. People, Brandeis faculty, staff, and students, as well as people who are not receiving a payment. Contracts are only required when there is a payment being made. A little bit of the terminology and components of a contract we use. The first is the Independent Consultant Agreement, or ICA. So this is the main university designed contract that will be used unless the individual or organization you're working with has their own contract. We do not ever need to submit both. So you should always going into the agreement assuming that you'll be using the ICA unless the individual or organization mentions that they have their own contract otherwise. Getting into the nitty-gritty of the Brandeis contract process. So first off, you've already taken the first step and you're watching this contract training video. That's extremely important to be able to make sure you have all the details of what you need to do in order to have a contract. The first part that should be done a semester before is you should make sure you have the necessary funds required to bring a contractor to campus. This needs to be requested during marathon. So that's why we say planning ahead is really crucial because contractors can cost different amounts depending on what type of services you are asking and who that individual is. Some of the things that may affect cost are the number of attendees at an event, the duration of the event, and just the individual cost of that contractor. We ask that you do not enter into a contractual agreement for any more than $5,000 unless it's discussed in depth with the Department of Student Engagement. That's just because this is a lot of money to be spending on a one-time event or one-time individual. So thinking about the cost benefit analysis, is it really worth it for your organization to pay that amount for this contractor? The next step, once you have funding, is that you can reach out directly to whoever it is that you want to contract with using our email templates that are linked in the handbook. And these email templates are great because they will give you examples of exact language to use when you're reaching out to a contractor, and they will also have linked the important documents such as the ICA, the Independent Consultant Agreement contract, the Brandeis W-9 or vendor certification form, and they'll have the link to our secure box account, which is where the contractor will submit their W-9. Couple things to note is that if there is a third party or an agent involved, you should never be working or negotiating with them directly. That should be done through the Department of Student Engagement. Once you've contacted them and sent them the ICA, they will also be able at that time to submit the Brandeis W-9 or the vendor certification form to that secure box account. The contractors should submit that document, not you, because the W-9 contains private information such as a social security number. The W-9 file name, in order to be located easiest, should be titled contractor name, whatever their name is, underscore, and the name of the club. So once you have sent the contract, the signed ICA to the program specialist, and the contractor has submitted their W-9, your job is done for the moment. Procurement and Business Services at that point will review the contract and sign it on behalf of the university. This can take up to 3 weeks. So again, that's why we want to give it time. Once procurement sends that duly signed contract back to the program specialist in student engagement, they will send it back to you. So this is a little visual of all those different steps of what happens in the contract process. So you, the student, send the contract and W-9 to the contractor for them to fill out. They will sign the contract and send it back to you. You can then send it to the program specialist. At the same time, the contractor should upload their W-9 to the secure box account. The program specialist will send that signed contract to procurement, who will then review it and sign it on behalf of the university. That's the double signature that needs to happen. Once the program specialist receives it back, the contract, they will send it to the student. You can then send that fully signed contract back to your contractor, and you are all set and ready to go for your event. Once the event happens, the budget analyst in Department of Student Engagement will pay the contractor using Coupa, our marketplace system. They will get paid in a check, and that can happen up to a month or 6 weeks after the contract finishes or after the date of the event. So getting a little more into that aspect of paying the contractor. So once you've received the fully signed contract back from the program specialist, you at that point can then submit a payment request on Campus Groups. You should submit this payment request under the original budget request in which you received funding in Marathon for that contractor. It needs to be attached to that original amount. The Treasury, the Student Union Treasury, and the budget analyst will then put that payment request on hold until the event or the contract begins. The budget analyst, after the event, will complete the necessary documentation on Coupa, and a check will be mailed out to the contractor after the event or service has been completed. This is extremely important because sometimes contractors want you to receive a down payment or part of the payment ahead of time. Brandeis cannot do that. This process, as we said, of getting everything processed from the budget analyst and accounts payable, getting that check in the mail and getting it to the contractor can take 4 to 6 weeks. So please encourage them to have patience with that process. That is all on contracts for right now. As always, please feel free to reach out to Student Engagement if you have any questions about contracts.